Hello everyone, let's continue with what we already were discussing on constraints. And this episode, we will cover practical implementation around all the kind of constraints that we discussed. Perfect. We are already logged in to the SQL server that we had created. Let me open the file as well. Cool. We have the file in front of us. Let's get started. Uh, to start with, let's unpin this object explorer. Perfect. So we begin with creating a new database for ourselves. Let's create database university DB. Created. We use we do not use our university, but we use it. Uh, use university DB. Okay. We will create the courses table to start with. Create table name. Here comes our columns. So course ID, let it be int, and we apply a constant to have only unique IDs over here. Course name, let's have varchar 50 and apply a not null constraint. Let's have course duration, let it be int, and it's fine to accept null values. Okay, we cannot expect everyone to plan ahead of time. Great. So let's have some notes over here. By declaring the course ID as unique, we ensure we don't have any duplicates. All right. For the names, we expect them to be mandatory, hence we have declared them as not null. And the last one is duration is made optional. Cool. Let's go ahead and insert few rows of data into our courses table. Insert into DBL courses with values. Okay. Okay, let's first mention the records over here. Computer science and 120. Let's paste it for 3 more times. Let's have data as 102, 103, and change our subjects. Otherwise, it looks very dull. Business and let's have statistics. Okay, perfect. Have a different duration for physics. Okay, and let's have one of the IDs as null. Cool. We execute these statements and they don't, because we haven't really created the table. Let's create it first. It's created. We have all the records. Let's verify data via selection. Perfect. Let's explore our unique key constraint. Okay. Say we insert into DBL courses values 103, let be the subject as electronics, and duration. Now we will see that this will definitely throw an error. The reason is we have defined, or rather constrained, the course ID column to only have unique values, and 103 is already there within the table. Okay, so this is giving us an error as expected. Let's have here something in our notes. So we have an error due to 103 already present for one of our courses. Cool. Let's and do we need to insert? Let's insert electronics. It should always end with a success message. Okay, cool. So one were affected, and essentially we have the electronics record inserted as well. Next up, let's test the null constraint, and for that let's insert a few rows again. Say we enter 3 more rows, and the first one, let's do a 5 over here, and null for the course name. When we execute this statement, it will definitely return us an error. The reason being, for the course name, we have already mentioned it as a mandatory field, i.e. we cannot have null or undefined values for it. Okay. Let's just have a note over here. So this one results into an error since our course name cannot be null or left blank. Okay. Cool. In the next statement, let's show you something wherein we are not inserting the course name, but we are only interested in mentioning the course ID and the course duration. Okay, and the values being say 105 and say the duration is 120. Okay, this will also give an error because though we are not mentioning what is the course name, hence by default the value that the table mentions for the course name is null, but whenever it is trying to do so, it throws an error and does not complete the execution of this statement. In fact, it does not commit the value into the table. So we get the error as expected. Let's mention a short note over here. It's the same. In the next insert, let's try something else where we mention the course ID and the course name. Okay, and 105 over here. Let's have a new course name, say corporate finance, and we do not specify the duration. This will not result in an error because we have already specified the course duration being an optional field. So by default, it is storing null value against this record. Let's verify that as well, whatever we discussed. Select star from DBL courses. Okay, from. Cool. Let's create our students table and predefine its relationship with the courses table. create table TBL students, std id int primary key. Sorry, the first constraint is it being a primary key, and a primary key, we know it has to be unique and not null. Okay. The second column, let it be the student name, and we make it as varchar of 50 and not null, i.e. we have just made it a mandatory field. std age as a tiny int, okay, tiny int, and we check, that is, we put a check constraint on this particular column wherein we need this age to be greater than equal to 80. Okay. Then we can have say the gender data with a char of 10 and declare a check constant for this particular column, as in student gender has to fall between any one of 3 values. Okay, it can be either male, let's mention or in between the conditions, female, and the last one being non-binary should be fine. Cool. We already have a lot of columns now, but yeah, let's close it with std course id. Okay, and this is the column that is a foreign key and is used to establish relationship between the students table to our courses table. Now, how do we mention it? So we mention the column name, its type, that is int. Note that this particular type should, of course, match with the type that we have accepted for the course ID in the courses table. So the keyword that we use over here is references TBL courses course ID. Okay, this should work. Let's mention a note over here. So we have just established the foreign key relationship over here. Okay, cool. Let's create the table. So TBL students is created, all fine. Now the part where we need to insert rows into the table. So insert into TBL students with values as 1001, the name, then comes our age, then is the gender, and of course the last one being the course ID. Let's repeat it, say 5 more times. Okay, let's just have the student's ID as sequential 2, 3, 4, 5 6. And this just for our note, right? Why are we using 1001 and not 001? Because essentially we have made the stdid int, right? Now if we insert 001, it will essentially store it as 1. Okay, so hence in most of the cases, whenever we come across IDs that are being used either in office, universities, etc., or in systems, it starts with say a 1 or any kind of digits, just assuming that if anybody is using to store integer data only. But obviously the other way to do is obviously having char values. Now let's fill up the rest of the data. Now our students, I'm just randomly picking up names, whatever is coming to my mind at the moment. Okay, but let us not change the age, and okay, let us give importance to all the genders so that we have appropriate representation and nobody has the chance to complain. Okay, and the course IDs as the ones that are acceptable. For the last one, let's have a null as the course ID, because if you remember, let us select the data from our courses. We do have a particular course with a null ID. The reason being, course ID, the column when we had declared, we had used the constant as unique and not primary. Remember, for unique, obviously all the records have to be unique, but we can also have a null as one of the value. Okay, so let's run all the statements. So we have inserted all the data, so we have 6 rows affected. Great. Let's move ahead and test the primary key constant. We insert, let's reuse whatever we have already typed, right? So we insert into TBL students values 1006, and let's mention a new student over here. Okay, and with the course ID of 101. Essentially, this should throw us an error because 1006 that represents the student ID is already present in the students table. Okay, there you go, we have the error. Moving ahead, let's test the foreign key constraint. We start with inserting rows into the table. We have a new ID, a valid one. Same student who tried to enter the university but couldn't, and 106 as a course ID, which, if you remember correctly, we do not have such ID in our courses table. So essentially this should throw us an error. Once we run it, so you see we have the error that says the insert statement conflicted with the foreign key constraint, blah blah blah. Let us mention a note over here: error due to incorrect course ID. Perfect. Let's have this student into our university and with a valid course ID, of course. Okay, great. Now let's move ahead and create our staff table. Okay, so that completes the whole plethora of examples that we tried to establish while we were discussing about constraints. Create table, TVL staff. We start with our ID, we create it as an identity. If you remember, we give an identifier that has a starting position or an integer and the increment as 1. So every time we add new rows, obviously we need not mention the STF ID or the staff ID, but it automatically increments basis the previously inserted data. We have the staff name as varchar 50 and we make it mandatory. We have the staff age as tiny int because obviously we wish to save space and not declare an integer data type for the age. And let's impose a check constraint on this particular column as it has to be greater than or equal to 28. So we ensure at least we have some kind of experience coming into the university, and also we mentioned the default value as 28 just in case anyone is missing out on entering that. And our STF gender can take the shape of whatever we had declared for the student table. I'm just copying it and changing the column name to STF gender char 10. Check whether STF gender equals male or female or non-binary. Cool, good days. But also let's have a default value, something different than what we already did earlier. We declare the default as non-binary. Cool. Finally, we have the column which establishes a relationship with the courses table. So it will be STF underscore course underscore ID, an integer value since the course ID is also integer, and this particular column references TVL courses table course ID. Perfect. Let's finally create the table. We have successfully created the staff table. Let's insert data into the staff table. So we insert into TVL staff with values. Let's have Moin 34 male and course ID as 102. Oh, sorry. Let's just have 3 rows to start with. Coin, and when we are having coin, let's have not Dodge but Dojo. Male, female, and let's have a non-binary as well. Cool, perfect. Let's have different course ID as well. Perfect, all the 3 rows are inserted. Let's select and verify as well. Great. Let's check the auto increment for identity. Right now, if you notice, we only inserted 4 columns, right? And we had created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. So what are we inserting? Essentially STF name, age, the gender, and the course ID. And we already discussed, since the first column is declared as an identity, what it does is the first row should have the ID as the starting position, that is 1001, and with every new row being inserted into the table, the ID increments by 1. So it will have 1002, 3, 4, and onwards. And that is what we are having over here. Great. Now the next one, we can check for default values. All right. Let's insert another row, say fine 34. Why do I mention? Okay, let's do away with without mentioning the age and the gender. It's already taken care, because if you see the gender, in case we do not mention anything, it'll accept a value that is non-binary. Let us mention the column names we have here. So the first is name, and last one being the course ID. Great. The value is inserted, and once we check for all the records, we get to see that the last record that we inserted, it has accepted the default values for age as 28 and for the gender as non-binary. Perfect. Let's move ahead and test the foreign key relationship that we have mentioned for the course ID. Again, let's insert a few more records. Say John wants to enroll himself as a staff member for a course ID that's not there in the course table. So obviously this throws us an error. Let's note it down here as well. So we get an error since 202 is not a valid course ID. Cool. That's it. Why leave out John, right? Let's have him assigned to a course. Okay, so all things end well. Perfect. With that, we come towards the end of this episode. Thank you for watching. See you around. Cheers.